Travis Moriarty. He is one of the co-founders of Ottawa's fastest growing company, Prestige Home Improvement. And most importantly, we played hockey together at age 10 and 11. So
you think a lot of like your success and stuff is through just your skill set or like the strategy that you have, but I would say that 80% of it is all your mindset.
If I were to ask
these are tough at the start.
I always, if you had found my YouTube.
I know, I was trying.
When you first started the company, driving to Kingston and other areas, like calling on the way there.
Like boom, we were like, okay, we're gonna quit our jobs. And for about a day, it was exciting. And there was this like period of time where we kind of were just like, okay, what the do we do?
What's going through your mind after something like that?
A lot of doubt, a lot of stress, a lot of doubt. Starting a business is like drowning underwater, but not knowing when you can come back up.
Moving into another market or another city, what goes into that?
We started to try to define exactly like what our culture is and what we want it to be.
If you had to talk to 15-year-old Travis, what would you say?
It's a good question. I would say,
all right, episode three. I'm not trying not even to call it a podcast, I'm just calling it a sit down. But we have a very special guest here today, Travis Moriarty. He is one half of Ottawa's fastest growing HVAC company.
yeah, I would say so.
Okay,
Yeah.
Ottawa's fastest growing HVAC company, that's what we're going with, Prestige Home Improvement with his partner Louis. He is a leader when it comes to sales, mindset, and everything for his team. And most importantly, we played hockey together at age 10 and 11. So, Travis, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
I'm really excited for this. So, usually, how these usually go is I'll start with a few kind of personal questions, maybe go that route, and then we'll get into some more fun stuff. But first question is very deep. Who is Travis Moriarty?
Damn, hit me with that one at the start. Eh? Who is Travis? I'd say I'm a young entrepreneur. I would say that I'm an aspiring leader. My goal is to build, like we always say this in our company too, we're trying to build leaders and grow through personal development. So my goal is to be a leader amongst other people that respect me as leaders.
Nice. And if I were to ask you to describe yourself in 3 words, what are the 3 words you would choose?
Some deep questions right at the start, eh? I'd say driver, ambitious, dreamer.
Dreamer? Nice. Now, if I were to ask
These are tough at the start. Eh?
I know, these are the three questions. If you had found my YouTube.
I know, I was trying to find the videos too. I was like, he's going to ask some questions. I saw something on Instagram.
And then the third thing is, if I were to ask the closest people around you, so maybe your family, Louis, I'm sure is another one, if they were to describe you in 3 words, what do you think they would say?
Well, yeah, probably personable, hard worker, maybe visionary.
Okay.
Big vision.
So the 2 that stand out to me are the 2 that you actually gave. They were all kind of 2 out of the 3, ambitious and dreamer, kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Where do you think that comes from?
It's hard to say. I mean, I don't know. Growing up, it's funny. Like we played hockey together and stuff, and just going through like I don't know, high school and just like the normal life path that people always talked about, like go to school, go to university, get a job, and then plan for your retirement. Just seemed a little, I don't know, too small for me a little bit. And so when I first got my first sales job ever, they always talked about, you know, limiting beliefs and kind of like trying to open up your vision and like what you see for your life.
Okay.
And that was like, I guess when I was like 20, 21, that was the first time where I really started to kind of see what could be possible for your life, right? And then I guess just, you know, through hard work and then through a little bit of, you know, progress and stuff, you start asking, you know, why is, you know, bigger things for your life not possible, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Sales is a big one for me, and even watching that other podcast, I saw what's called Irrepressible.
Irrepressible,
Podcast. The answers you were giving, you guys were talking about mindset was a big one, and kind of those mindset meetings. I don't want to talk about it too much, but it is very interesting to me because we talked about it before. We kind of both started in a sales job.
Yeah.
For me, we didn't really have much of that. It was like your sales meetings were like going over your leads, your numbers, whatever. And then it was maybe like a couple minutes dedicated to like, you just gotta like push it, whatever. And there's no hate to that, but I found it interesting that you guys were going into other areas that aren't just involved in sales. Where did that kind of come from? And why do you still do it? Like, how often do you do it? Weekly?
Yeah, every day actually.
Every day?
Well, I would say we do meetings every single day.
Okay.
So the sales guys work 6 days a week. Okay. Actually, quite a few people in the company work 6 days a week.
Wow.
And I would say it's funny that you bring that up because we first started doing that when me and Louis, first got that sales job, right? And so that was our first like introduction to that type of thing. And there was a lot of different things like Tony Robbins was a big one. Okay. Listen to like Jordan Belford and different books and different people that speak on like, these different mindset things. Yeah. And pretty much like we started doing it in our company and it was like a schedule that we followed for a long time. And then it almost seemed like after a while we were like, okay, we've done enough, we've done all the mindset stuff you can do. Yeah. Right. But as new people started coming in, we noticed that like when we stopped focusing on the mindset thing, that people really started to slip a little bit too. And it kind of like, it's really true that a lot of it, you think a lot of like your success and stuff is through just your skill set or like the strategy that you have. Yeah. But I would say that 80% of it is all your mindset, right? Because especially in sales, you could have like a terrible month, right? And then the last 3-4 days, you could sell all your deals in 1 month, right? Yeah. But if you didn't keep yourself sharp and you didn't keep yourself ready for the last little bit of that month, then it would have ruined it, right? Mm-hmm. And I've seen lots of sales guys that have come in like our company as well too. And what trips them up, the ones that say fail or maybe don't last and like give up, are always the ones that can't get out of like their own way in a sense, right? And the people that develop this like really iron, like just nonstop mindset, it just kind of turns them into a problem solver. And it's like anything that comes in their way, it's nothing they can't figure out, if that makes sense. Yeah, no, that's really interesting what you said, like getting in their own way. Yeah. And that kind of ties into what you were saying about the last 3 days. You can either take advantage of those last 3 days or kind of botch the whole month, right? And not save your month. What really stands out to me about these mindset meetings is not only, obviously it's great what it's doing for the sales team, it's great kind of camaraderie that you're building, but a lot of people would hear that and be like, holy cow, like the extra work that just you have to do and Louis have to do to come up with those presentations, especially like you just said, you're doing them daily. What is that looking like? Is it just kind of off the cuff? Are you preparing stuff for them? Is it like structured? Yeah, no, it's structured. I mean, now it's a little bit like we've been doing this for like, I guess like almost 4 years. Yeah. The company is just approaching like 3 years. So it's a little bit more, you can kind of come up with things a little bit quicker now, but it's still very structured. And we have, my brother who's in Nova Scotia is the sales leader out there. So he's the one that runs all the meetings. And then we've got Liam who's in Ottawa and he does half the meetings here as well. So it's not just me. Okay. Now as well too. Okay. But it is, it's just a part of like preparation, right? And it's kind of like a blessing in disguise too, because it kind of gets you used to like public speaking. As well. For sure. You just forces yourself to do it like every single day. Yeah. In all honesty, we've kind of gotten used to it now. It's just kind of like part of life. But what is actually kind of cool is like, it also forces you to, read more. Because say you're like, okay, well, like I said to you, it's like, oh, you've run out of things to talk about, essentially, right? Yeah. Then you got to read more books. Then you have to study more things. So you realize that what you're consuming is actually a lot more positive, like for your life, right? And it almost starts to like hack your brain. So now this is like all that you're thinking about and stuff too, if that kind of makes sense. Oh, it definitely makes sense. That was like the initial thing to me. I'm like, holy cow, like they not only, that's like its own job in itself, like where you have to come up with a mini presentation. Because if you told like, I don't know, a kid in high school, Yeah.
Like how often you do a presentation? Not very often, right? Maybe
It
once
sounds
a month.
funny, eh? Mindset meeting. You're like, okay, what are you?
No, not even that it sounds funny, but it's just the amount of work. Like you have a whole company that you're running, but then on top of that, you're also preparing like what is it, like 30 minutes, an hour?
Yeah, it depends. It's like, it depends if it's like sales focused or like mindset focused. But yeah, probably like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that.
Yeah, crazy. Because just talking to like I said, a kid in high school who does a presentation once a month, and then you're like, yeah, every second day you have to prepare.
Yeah.
What did they say? Like they'd be like, what? And I have to run the company? So that's kudos to you for that.
Appreciate it.
On that kind of note, and just a little preface here, we had drinks a couple weeks back, so I had a couple things prepared. But one of the things...
A couple too many drinks.
It's a good time though. But one of the things you mentioned there that stood out to me was, and this kind of ties into the whole sales thing, is what did you tell me about about who you hire for your sales roles? I remember. I can tell you what it was.
You're making me maybe
Right,
jog my memory.
It was you basically said you don't hire anybody that's ever been in HVAC sales before.
Yeah. Essentially, yeah. We basically, I found like a good way of like recruiting people is, and not to get too into like the industry as a whole, but like a good way of like recruiting people is people that were personable, people that are like, want to be a student, because it's very difficult to bring people on. What we've noticed with like other hires as well too is like if you bring someone on and they've been in sales for a long time and maybe specifically in that industry, they either have bad habits or they're very hard to teach. Depends on who you are, but they kind of act like they know everything already, right?
Yeah.
And so, we brought in some of our friends that were personal trainers. We did bring in someone like that was in car sales as well too, but they have to be able to be like a student and kind of like check their ego a little bit at the door too. Because like in the meetings, we'll do different things like role plays and things like that. Yeah. And it's kind of it's a little silly at the start when you're doing role plays, reciting a script and doing objection handling and stuff like that. And so it's a little uncomfortable for people. So it's a very open environment.
Very uncomfortable. It's not fun.
Especially when you screw up too.
Oh my God, yeah. And it's just awkward because it's not real. Like it's, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And someone's acting as like the customer and stuff like that. But you have to be able to check your ego and just, be able to learn and want to like improve as well too. And also, just like sometimes if you hire from depending on certain companies or whatever, you can have like people that have bad habits, for example, as well too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really interesting too, because you would think, and majority of people would probably think this, like, oh, I'm going into HVAC. Well, I want to recruit all the people who have done sales in HVAC, right? Yeah. Especially you and Louis came from HVAC. Yeah. Sales too.
Yeah, we did.
So it's almost like juxtaposition where you're like, why would you not? Is there some sort of like, I don't know, other than maybe being not coachable, because is there like some sort of baggage that they come with, or is it to you guys? Is it you're trying to just create a totally different like way of innovation in your company compared to traditional HVAC companies?
I would say, there's a couple different things. Like, I would say number one is we're very different than like most HVAC companies. And so sometimes people will come from like, say, I don't know, like a bigger company where things are, I don't know, maybe a little bit more set up in a sense. Yeah. And so maybe the deals are a little bit easier. Yeah. And so they have a preconceived idea of like maybe their skill set on like how good they are at sales, because they're essentially what you'd call order takers. So they think they're closing a deal, but they're really just going to the house. Someone's just saying yes, they're signing papers, right? Yeah. So that's something that we noticed. The other thing is too, is depending where it is, it's not to make it just like a vast statement, but depending where it is too, sometimes you'll come, and it doesn't have to just be HVAC, but that's probably the most common one is, bad habits where maybe it's not going to align with like our values, our core values, and our culture as well too. Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing. It has to be a culture fit, because we have hired people before from other companies, but it just has to be people that have integrity and are like open to learning new things and not kind of just stuck in their old ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. What goes into something like that? Like, I don't know if it's just by the way you act? Is it like, are you sitting down and writing? What goes into creating that sort of culture that you then, because even what you were saying earlier with Emily was moving into another market or another city, now you're not necessarily there hands-on all the time, but you still have to get that transfer, especially if you're scaling fast. What goes into that?
It's a good question. It's kind of funny. Right now, actually, we're right in the midst of like creating our own culture book, because for a while, me and Louis and like everybody else that was part of the company, we're like, we have a good culture, and we were trying to reverse engineer like why, you know. And so we kind of, you would think that when you start, you're like, oh, these are our core values and this is what we're doing. But at the start, it was literally just me, Louis, and we had our one friend, Tyler, who was just, calling leads and booking appointments.
Yeah.
So we were really just like figuring things out as they come. And then about a year and a half in is when we started to kind of define, what are our core values, what's important to us as a company, right? It was always about, customer service and like, having absolute integrity and just like over delivering for what you promise, right? Because that's something that we saw a lot before, and I'm sure a lot of companies have this issue is, you promise something or your sales guys promise something and then the follow through is just not there. And it's like if you were to buy something and, you feel like you overpaid because you didn't get the value.
Yeah.
You
want to always make sure they're feeling like they underpaid, like they got a deal, right? Almost.
Exactly. They feel like you provided so much value after they've purchased it that they feel like they got more than they paid for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
And so that was kind of the one aspect with like the customer service that we started to try to like define. And then as far as like the people in our organization, we had a lot of people. First, we started hiring like our friends, and like, my brother, Louis' brother, works with us as well too. And so it was kind of like the reverse of what people said, don't hire friends and family.
Yeah.
So it was like a very tight-knit group, right? So we would go to, dinners after we'd hit a goal. So we were celebrating our wins, right? Nice. So we were like, why when it was just 4 or 5 people, was it really fun to, be a part of? And it was like, okay, we'd set a goal, and then we'd go to dinner, and we'd be celebrating as a team, right? And we kept doing that as we grew, even after obviously it wasn't just like, more of our friends coming on board. Yeah. And so we started to try to define exactly like what our culture is and what we want it to be. And then to your question about like, how do you maintain that when you're scaling, is it's all about the leaders that you have in the right positions, right? Yeah. So obviously I'm not able to be in Nova Scotia, right? Where our second office is. Yeah. Neither is Louis. And so it's up to, say, for example, our managers that are there, our leaders that are there, and then doing like we do a weekly leadership meeting, right?
Yeah, just on Zoom or something?
Yeah, exactly. And so there's some guys from Ottawa, some guys from Nova Scotia. And so just really driving and drilling like what we want to be as a company. And then from top down, that's what they're saying to the people that they're managing and stuff too. Yeah. Right? And it's challenging because it's good in theory, right? Yeah. But then you're like so far removed that you're kind of like, okay.
Yeah, you're not there to see it every single day, whereas here you can literally be in the office watching the leader.
That's the thing, right? That was what I noticed when we expanded is like you can't you're not in the office, you don't have that day-to-day connection with people. But I think that we're doing it right because it was funny, me and Louis, we went up to Nova Scotia a couple weeks ago. Yeah. It was like a surprise thing for my birthday. And there was like...
Oh shit, happy belated birthday.
Thank you. Okay. And there was like 7 people I hadn't met in the company, right?
Oh wow.
Which was kind of weird.
That's wild, yeah.
And and so when we went, we met everybody and it was kind of had that connection. And it seemed like talking to them that they already were kind of like speaking the same message that we started with, right? So obviously like it was working with like the right leaders and the right managers and stuff like that.
Does it ever feel repetitive to you? Like, this is just a personal question. And this is just, as you were talking about it, I thought about it. When you're having those like weekly leadership meetings and really like just drilling home the culture and the messaging and all that, does it ever feel like repetitive? And if not, how have you kind of come combated that?
I'm trying to think. I think in the past, I think if you're doing the same thing and you're not trying to innovate and you're not trying to actually improve, then yes, and that has happened in the past where, like I was telling you, it felt like we were saying the same thing over and over again, which might be a problem. But also if you have new people coming in that haven't seen what you said a year ago, you kind of want to drive the same thing. So maybe a little bit in the past, but I would say because there's so many new things and there's so much like growth that there's almost like too many things to talk about in a 30-minute or an hour meeting that it doesn't, because you're kind of covering so many things and you almost have to like take what you want to talk about and condense it and really like get to your points, you know? It's an interesting question. I never thought about that.
Maybe like a cycle. The reason I ask it too, and now I'm even thinking about this as you just said that, is when you brought up the point of if you hire new people, they didn't hear what you said a year ago. That's a big one in like the content game, where it's like people are like, oh, well, I already made a piece of content on that. It's
I've heard that before, actually.
Well, you have new followers. Right? So you're making like a percentage of your content for your current followers, a percentage of your content for new followers, and a percentage of your content for the like people who don't follow you and are like seeing you in the algorithm, right?
I heard that before too with when you're making content too, you want to always maintain like, you know, what your message is and who you are, because there's a lot of people every single day that haven't seen your videos before. So you're like, oh, like I've already said this many times. And it's like, but all the new people that are like maybe like not seen your videos haven't seen it, you know?
Yeah. Okay, I want to take it back a little bit to the words. You said driven, ambitious, and dreamer. Those are the 3 words you said, right?
Yeah.
If memory serves. When we had drinks the other night, there was a couple of things you said that stood out to me. One of them was that you had a YouTube channel when you were a kid. Yeah. So this is like, I'm jumping away from HVAC right now. I apologize. But it's just something that piqued my interest. First of all, that's very ambitious, especially what that would have been like 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah,
probably.
I was playing, it's funny, I got a story after for you.
But it was what, you were 15?
Yeah, I was 15 and 16. 15 to 17 pretty much.
Which is really, when you think about it, the time that, I mean, YouTube's been around for a while before that, but it's kind of the time that it really started to like take off as like a career. Yeah. Sort of, right? And here you are, a kid making content where like not a lot of people are doing that. Can you speak to maybe what that did for your confidence, maybe lack of confidence, maybe like maybe it did the opposite, or just what that did for you as a human being, building resilience and whatnot? Yeah, actually that's a good question. It was funny because I was playing hockey at the time too, right? And so it was very weird as a kid making videos, because you're like making vlogs, and they weren't very good, to be honest with you. but I was trying, you know. But it was pretty embarrassing, like, you know, talking to a camera, and I'd film sometimes at high school, I'd film at the gym and stuff like that. And it was fitness content too, so it was pretty like, and this was right before like fitness content really blew up, I would say. Yeah. And so it was kind of awkward, and it was pretty scary, to be honest, to put that out, because people would make fun of you. People make comments at school and stuff. You know, you're right around that age, you're talking to girls, filming like a vlog or whatever. And then I remember like when I was playing hockey, people, which was kind of a compliment, but people would like mention it on the ice. Yeah. They'd be like, 16-year-old bodybuilder. I was like, like on the other team.
Yeah. Oh, and wow. So they were like chirping me they were like chirping me about my videos. Yeah. And so it was, it was kind of funny how that all like happened. But what I would say too is it definitely like, it kind of got me, that's kind of when like it got me into the attitude of just like doing things, even though you're like insecure about it. Yeah. Even though it's like really scary, and just like not really giving a fuck, like not caring. Yeah. Even though people always say that, don't care, but you really do care, but you just have to kind of push that feeling away. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think it ever like would go away until you just don't really have time to like think about it. That's the thing, right? Is like, no matter what, someone's gonna, even if you're extremely successful, you've done everything you said, there's always gonna be, there's gonna be more people that are just like, you know, I guess you could say, it's kind of cliche, but haters and stuff like that. And so it kind of just, I don't know, it kind of got me used to that, like, people are going to talk, people are going to say things, it doesn't really matter, you're not going to die, you know, you're fine, and just keep moving. And it's kind of the same feeling whenever, I guess, doing meetings or whatever, because it used to be something that was like very nerve-wracking at the start. Or, you know, when we did, for example, we did a gala this year, and so it was the first time that me and Louis as well too had ever spoken in front of, like, he was like between 80 and 100 people. And yeah, and so it was, we were hosting this gala, and so we had to, you know, host it and speak in front of all these people with microphones and stuff. Yeah. So it was kind of the same thing there. We're like, okay, just do it. Even if you're scared, it's going to be worth it, and you're going to improve, and it's going to be better after. Yeah. So I guess it's just, probably just like doing things that scare you, and just like not really caring about, you know, what people say or the outcome.
Do you ever, like, to that point, do you ever find yourself slipping out of that, and you kind of have to bring yourself back
all
in?
the time, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. There's a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot of things. It's like, it's always like a mental game, you know? It's even like if you're like, you know, getting lazy, going to the gym, you know, you have these like thoughts in your head. You're like, you know, I probably need a couple extra rest days, and you start to convince yourself of these things. Yeah. And so it's kind of like a constant battle of just like, you know, reminding yourself. Yeah. It's kind of like the bitch voice, and then you know, the true voice. So trying to force yourself to always, I don't know, listen to like what you should do, not just like, you know, the easy way or whatever too.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. The other so I said there was two things that you said that stood out to me. That was one of them, and then the story about you and Louis driving up on your first, kind of when you first started the company, driving to Kingston and other areas, and calling on the way there. Yeah. Which is I said was a story I resonated with, because when I started, I would do the Toronto drive. For some reason, I had in my head that better clients were in Toronto, and I had my first couple clients in Toronto, and I would literally drive there in the morning, like start at like 4 a.m, drive there, shoot content, drive back, because I like just didn't make sense to like spend money on a hotel or whatever, right? So it's like about $150 in gas, and then like came back. Was that, and this sounds like a stupid question, but was it scary? And B, you were talking about that. Okay, first of all, was it scary? Let's start there.
Yeah, you know, it's funny when we first like quit our jobs. At first, there was a lot of excitement. We were like this big build up. Couple things happened, and like boom, we were like, okay, we're gonna quit our jobs. And for about a day, it was exciting. And then we were at Louis' condo, and it was the next day, and we were both there. And it was this like period of time where we kind of were just like, okay, what the f do we do? And so we didn't really have like,
we're gonna go. That's funny.
You just had a job, right? And so you're like, you had a routine.
You're like told what, you don't have to figure out what to do.
Yeah, you have your, say like in sales for whatever, you have your appointments for your day, you're going to your sales appointments. And so you're kind of like in this routine, right? Yeah. And so there was this period where we were just both kind of like, okay, so what do we, we had a website, we had like some, obviously like some skill set and stuff like that. Yeah. But yeah, we were like, okay, what do we do at this point, right? And so it kind of just led to, okay, we had a little bit of database of like clients, potential clients, and we would try calling, and then the days were just getting on, and then it'd be like 2-3 p.m. and we'd have like maybe a couple appointments booked, but then it would be maybe a drive distance. And so we were like, hey, fuck it, why don't we just, you know, you drive, I'll call, and we'll go to this area. We'll give it a 2-hour drive so that we'll give it of calls. Yeah, we'll give us enough time. It didn't really make sense logically now that I'm looking back, but we were like, we'll drive for 2 hours. That'll give us enough time. By the time we get there, we'll have the appointment set up for the day. Yeah, and some people might not even be available that day. Oh man, there was days that we drove up and there was never one day we didn't have one appointment. But that's good. Yeah, but there was definitely days we drove up 2 hours. We had like booked a hotel room or whatever, and we had like one appointment. We showed up, they told us to kick rocks. Oh my God. And so we were like, okay. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, long answer, but yeah, it was terrifying actually. Because then you're like, okay, now you have to like, you think because you know about sales that it's gonna, and it does translate a lot to business, but there's a lot more that goes into it.
Yeah.
And then every level there's more and more.
Yeah.
But I guess just figuring out what to do when you have like that anxiety or like that stress as well too, and then just don't do nothing, you know?
Yeah. The other thing you said about that I really loved was those stories are great because it worked out. Right? If not, you'd just be like, yeah, I'm an idiot. Right?
Yeah. If not, you're like, ah, fuck.
Yeah, that's funny. On the days that you went up and maybe it didn't necessarily pan out, you had one appointment, or like you just said, they told you to kick rocks, the one appointment. What's going through your mind after something like that? When you go to the hotel that you booked and like paid money for?
Yeah, I'm trying to bring myself back. There's a lot of doubt, a lot of stress, a lot of doubt. But it's also good too, because me and Louis did it together. So
yeah.
It was always good. We've always been a good partnership. And so kind of having him, if ever one of us like felt a little bit more down or like stressed out or something like that, the other person would bring the other person up, right?
Yeah.
But we're also a little delusional too, I think, as well, because even at that point we're like, okay, we're gonna get to this point, then we're gonna hire this many people, and so that's kind of why I said dreamer as well too, because I don't know, like obviously we're grateful how things have like happened, but it was a lot of delusion at the start and a lot of like saying you're gonna do this that kind of seems ridiculous, even when we tell people and stuff. And like believing it, but also like almost lying to yourself to be like, we're gonna do this. So a lot of like just talking about the future. So a lot of like, I don't know, setting the vision, what it's gonna be like and stuff. And then like moments of doubt and stress because you're pretty, you know, as that first year of business was like really, it was a grind. It was very tough. And so a lot of financial stress and stuff like that. But it was basically the combo of, you know, excitement, dreaming, and then like stress and anxiety. You know?
I think it's Alex Hormozy. You obviously know who he is.
Yeah, for sure.
He says he says like when you start a business you have delusional optimism. Or something. I think that's what he calls it or something, where it's like you have no idea what you're jumping into, but you're like just so pumped. Like, and then like,
what do I do?
First obstacle happens and you're like, fuck. Yeah. That's funny.
I think what did he say too? He was like, starting a business is like drowning underwater, but not knowing when you can come back up. So if you're like underwater, but you know it's for a minute, you're cool, because you're like, okay, in a minute.
Yeah, it's gotta hold it up.
But you don't know, because you tell yourself, but you really don't know if it's gonna work out.
Yeah.
You know, you do, but you're like,
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah.
There's uncertainty, basically.
100%. Yeah.
What do you like to do for fun?
Good question, man. I don't know if you'd consider, I guess, working out, but besides that, I don't know. I don't have many hobbies, to be honest with you. Like, we used to play a lot of hockey and stuff like that. Pretty much just work out. Yeah, pretty boring, to be honest.
I find myself the same thing. Like I was thinking about it the other day, and that's why I asked the question, because I was thinking about it. I'm like, I don't really like do anything anymore. Like I'm like sitting there, I'm like, what? I guess if you consider like traveling, maybe, but like that's still like an experience. It's not really like a hobby or like a whatever.
I don't know. It's weird. Like someone asked me this the other day. I think it was my tech chair. They're like, "What are your hobbies?" And I was like, I don't have any hobbies. I don't think there's anything wrong with it either, too.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, it's like
reading, maybe you could say?
Yeah, exactly, I guess. You could say it's probably like a blessing and a curse, too, because like, at least, I've worked in jobs where all I wanted to do was, get to the weekend so I could go out with the boys or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
And now it's like, it seems like there's not enough time in a day or in a week or whatever, too.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a blessing because, you get to work on something you want to work on. I'm sure you feel the same way,
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. I mean, most of the time, sorry, sometimes not, but I think that's just nature of the game. Okay, just to wrap up here. If you could pinpoint 2 events in your life, doesn't have to be the highest, but just a big high and something that was like a low for you, where would you go?
Honestly, I would say one of the a pretty big high was last, like just at the end of the year here and New Year's. We when we did host that gala, it was pretty cool because it was, except for a couple people from Nova Scotia, but every single employee that came down for this for the event we were throwing, every like family member, so all the parents, all the
nice.
partners, we invited like all the partners, all the dealers, all the, you know, anybody that basically touched the business in some sense in the last like 3 years, and they were all there like for one night, right?
Yeah.
And the night went really well, which, and we were obviously like nervous as well too.
Yeah.
So it was like a pretty massive, like high to kind of just see, you know, you get stuck in like the day to day and like the stress of the day. And then so for like one night, it's kind of sitting back and like seeing things come together, you know?
Yeah.
I think also putting up the sign in Nova Scotia was kind of cool too, actually.
Yeah.
But
I
would
guess
say,
you don't have a sign here because you're in a building, right?
yeah, but soon in the next like
next location?
next few months, like within 2 months, we'll have like have one in Ottawa as well too. Nice. I would say, yeah, I was actually trying to think about that. I'd say probably the gala, seeing everything come together and all the friends and family coming out to support as well too. And then biggest low, I would say there was a couple different times, but there was one time that me and Louis, it was the first year of business. We just, I think we were like a couple months in. We just both went through breakups, and we were trying to figure things out, right, with the business. And we had this one deal that just, it was like our 5th or 6th deal that went completely wrong. And we were basically having to like refund the client. And the money that we had in the amount that we had to refund was more than we had in the account at the time, and it was coming out in like 2 to 3 days. And we were like, Jesus Christ, like what are we gonna do? Yeah. And a couple different things. We sold a deal, thankfully, to basically get it funded before we had to do the refund. But we were just sitting there and we were just broke and kind of like, okay, what are we gonna do? You know? So it was just this like. And then even the next like 6 months to a year, it was just a little bit isolating just because, you know, we're grinding, which I'm not trying to make it sound too bad. It was also fun as well.
Yeah.
But it's just isolating because you're going through this, you're trying to like figure this out, and you can't really like, you can't complain about it. You chose to start a business, you know, so it's your fault, right?
Yeah.
And so probably that time. But like I said too, those stories are cool to talk about because they worked out. It would have been not as cool if it
didn't. I want to talk about it. Yeah,
I probably wouldn't be bringing this up if it didn't, you know?
Fair. So it's a low with a high at the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Very nice. And then last question, if you had to talk to 15-year-old Travis starting his YouTube channel, what would you say? Or advice you'd give?
Yeah. I would say, it's a good question. Maybe drink less. No, I'm just kidding.
Fair.
I'm not sure. You kind of stumped me on that one. Do more things that scare you. I
like that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
It's a little sweaty, I won't lie.
Appreciate it, bro.
I apologize. But for the camera, that was awesome. Appreciate it.